We're here at the Open World Forum 2010, and I'm joined now by Larry Augustin of SugarCRM and Philippe Aigrin of SUP in Space. And we're going to talk about whether the cloud can be free. So, let me start with that question. Can the cloud be free, Larry?
So, to answer, Dave, I think the answer is yes, in the right circumstances. What does that mean? That means that you have to be able to get your data out, so you can't be locked in. So data lock-in is a big, big part of it. The other thing is you have to be able to move that service from the cloud to your own servers or to other places in the cloud, which means you have to have access to that code as well. So it's that ability to be portable, the ability for you as a customer to have flexibility and choice and freedom that has to be enabled. So it can be, absolutely, but you have to get those right aspects of freedom and choice and flexibility to make it happen.
So the only license I'm aware of which assures software freedom for cloud users is the Affero GPL, and there are very few web services that are available under the AGPL. Philippe, do you think that the use of non-AGPL cloud services is a threat to freedom?
Indeed. It's an obvious one when these services are reproprietarizing on the server side standalone software which was originally available in free software, all the Google Docs type of applications. That's clearly a reproprietarization and a threat to freedom. But it's even for new services, the non-availability for running your own version and adapting it of the code on the server side is a major nuisance, a major impediment to the exercise of freedom. But freedom issues do not stop at what happens in the cloud. They also depend on what is happening outside of the cloud. That is, how many people do actually run servers, host their own data, run their own services, or are in touch with other individual users or small organization users who do so.
Okay. Well, and the other thing to remember about licensing there is that the AGPL does help protect if software is taken and placed in the cloud. It helps protect the free and open source nature of that software. But it's really up to the user to make sure that cloud service provider is giving them the right freedoms. And that goes beyond just software licensing, but it goes to data as well. So you can take AGPL software, put it in the cloud, but not give the users access to the ability to get their data out. It doesn't require that. It doesn't necessarily enable that.
So far in this discussion, we're taking as a given that software freedom is important for cloud users and that data availability is important for cloud users. In your experience, is that something that users care about? Because my experience is that more and more people just think of it as the browser is free and that's enough.
Well, look, I think that's a great question because there are a set of users who understand it and care, and I think there are a set of users that don't understand it yet and don't understand what's going to happen when they try and get their data out. One of the things that we find at SugarCRM is that in Europe, in particular, people care more. They very much understand the notion that their data can reside in a particular country or not in a particular country across particular national boundaries. They understand that there are certain privacy laws. I'll give you an example of that. If you look at what's happening right now with Google and the Google mapping photo service in Germany, where Germany has tried to ban the Google photo service, right, because of privacy laws. Okay, that kind of thing would never happen in the U.S., where people don't quite have that same approach or quite that same visibility, right?
But Philippe, isn't it a bit presumptuous of us in the free software movement to think that we should be caring about software freedom when users don't really mind about it?
Well,
are we not imposing our view of the world on
let's
people
say,
who really don't care about it?
Allow me, as on my activist site, to state that what users care about is also the product of what we tell them. And so we are not just in an observing situation where we would simply constate that the users do not care, and then we would offer them the services that are screwing them. So we are in a situation where there are a number of players who want the user to care because they care themselves. It's also very different when you look at individual users and business users. They have different relations to that. And for people like us who do web services that target both categories of users, when you deal with individual users, you will realize that there are many things, for example, social networks, where they do not even think it can be done in another manner than a centralized server, when in reality there is absolutely no functionality that requires that. So a thing like Facebook or video hosting, peer-to-peer distribution by seeding and leeching does a much better job at distributing video than YouTube or Dailymotion or whatever. So indeed, there is lots of pedagogy to do, but also lots of enablement. The reason why users, even when they are sort of conscious of interest, do not run their own services and their own servers, is that it's not yet easy enough. It's you do not have a simple plug and work.
This is a place where I think cloud services can help. Cloud services can make those things easier for individual users. Would you agree with that?
I agree, provided there is a real trajectory. If you take you take WordPress as a software for blog hosting, and there is a big hosted service with actually 6 websites in terms of frequentation. It's a huge. It certainly runs virtualized in the cloud, but nonetheless, each time there are more users in WordPress, there are more users who host their own WordPress blog, and this is the type of trajectory we like to see. I mean, as free software community activists, because there you see that we know not everybody is going to do it right away. But the fact that a sufficient number of people do is enough to, let's say, to keep people whom we like, but we know they need to be kept behaving. And
so
that's how it will work.
To be a little bit provocative here, you say that it's important that people be able to host their software. I would agree with that. But we've seen that people have moved away from, for example, hosting their own mail server and web server to hosted services, because most people don't want to have a server running under the stairs. Would you agree with that, Larry?
Yes, I think there's a lot of people that, unfortunately, or to some degree, don't discover that they care until they try and move, they try and do something, and they discover that their data is completely locked in.
And isn't that a barrier to mesh services and distributed cloud services?
Eben Moglani, he coined the expression "the dictator of convenience." Of course, when you get trapped, when you get locked in, there was always some form of convenience that was offered to you initially to get you in. And it takes some time, quite long, before you realize which price you actually paid to it. So this time we like people to figure out early.
Well, it's a big selling point on our part at SugarCRM that we provide that portability with our application. And we see users caring more and more about it. And as I said, in particular in Europe, we see users care, and it's why our business is very strong in Europe, right? But I think there's still some education that needs to happen, and it's particular markets and segments where people care more versus elsewhere.
Such as CRM software, which I know a lot of companies don't want to put out there outside of their firewall.
Well, it's your customer data, right? It's your, that this is considered, very important proprietary data. Do you put it out there in a random place, or do you put it somewhere where you know it? And even worse, suppose you've decided to move from a SaaS vendor, you want to move somewhere else, and now you can't get access to your customer data again, right? I mean, that's pretty scary for a business, and that's part of what we, when we sell to customers, that's part of the reason they come to us versus, say, a traditional multi-tenant SaaS offering.
So thank you very much, Philippe and Larry. Very interesting discussion. And goodbye from the Open World Forum and Intelli'N TV.